My name is Eleanor Hart, and I am 62 years old. For most of my life, I have tried to be the kind of woman who keeps her word, minds her own business, and shows compassion even when it isn't convenient. My husband, Michael, used to say that I had a nurse's heart with a lawyer's memory, meaning I loved deeply and forgot nothing. I took it as a compliment. It's strange how those traits, the soft and the sharp, would eventually become the very tools I needed to defend myself. Our life in Cedar Lake was quiet and steady, the kind of life people spend decades trying to build. I managed a small antique shop on Main Street, open just 4 days a week, so I could spend the others tending my garden and helping our grown children with whatever life threw at them. Michael was considering retirement from his teaching job within the next 2 years. We had plans, modest ones, but they mattered to us. A road trip through the Southwest, a long overdue visit to a friend in Oregon, maybe even a small renovation of the upstairs bathroom that had been stuck in 1994 since, well, 1994. But there was always one unpredictable element orbiting our peaceful home, and her name was Vanessa. My husband's younger sister, 49 years old going on 15. Dramatic, entitled, and yet somehow perpetually helpless. The kind of woman who always had a new crisis, but never the capacity to handle it. Over the years, her problems had ranged from car trouble to job losses to sudden emotional breakdowns that required long, tearful phone calls at midnight. I had learned to hover between empathy and distance. But Michael, kind, loyal Michael, always tried to save her. There were times I suspected she depended on that more than she depended on logic. Still, our home felt safe, predictable, grounded, until the night Vanessa called with a trembling voice and an emergency that, according to her, was life or death. I didn't know then that her words would eventually pull me headfirst into the ugliest deception of our family's history. I didn't know that her request for help would cost me $18,000 and the fragile trust one still had in the people closest to me. I didn't know that somewhere across the ocean, she was already smiling for a camera beneath the iron shadow of the Eiffel Tower. I only knew that my husband's phone lit up on the nightstand while we were settling in to watch an old detective film. And when I glanced at the caller ID and saw her name, I felt the familiar blend of concern and fatigue settle into my bones. Should I ignore it? Michael asked, half joking, half hopeful. You know you can't, I said softly. And so he answered. I listened to his voice shift from confusion to concern to alarm. I watched him sit upright, rubbing his forehead with the heel of his hand as he repeated the words hospital, tests, and insurance won't cover it. And in that moment, something inside me tightened, the same way the air thickens right before a storm breaks. I couldn't explain it then, but I felt a subtle tremor of wrongness in the room, something just slightly off, like a musician playing a familiar melody with one note distinctly out of tune. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I would, and the truth would unravel every piece of trust one thought we had left as a family. Michael hung up the phone and just sat there, staring at the darkened TV screen as though it suddenly held the answers he needed. I waited. Years of marriage had taught me that if I stayed quiet long enough, he would eventually speak. She's in trouble, Elle, he finally whispered. Real trouble this time. I folded my hands in my lap. What kind of trouble? He took a deep breath. She said she's been having serious abdominal pain, went to the emergency room last night. They ran a bunch of tests and found something suspicious. She didn't want to say more until she knows for sure. She has another appointment tomorrow for scans, and her insurance won't cover the cost. She needs help. My heart contracted. I may have had complicated feelings about Vanessa's life choices, but I didn't want her sick. How much help? I asked quietly. His eyes flicked toward me, apologetic even before he opened his mouth. 18,000. I felt the number hit me the way cold water hits the skin, sharp, disorienting, and impossible to ignore. 18,000 for scans? She said it includes tests, consultations, and immediate treatment if they find anything serious tomorrow. I let out a slow breath. Why didn't she tell you sooner? Why tonight? And why does she always seem to need money in a panic? Michael winced. I know how it sounds. But what if she really is sick? She didn't sound dramatic this time. She sounded scared. Fear is a powerful manipulator, both for the person feeling it and for the person observing it. Did she ask you or both of us? I asked. She said she'd pay us back, with tax return money, and a payment plan. She swore she would. Elle, I don't think she's lying about being sick. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to refuse him. I also didn't want to feed another one of Vanessa's endless crises. But illness, real illness, is not something I take lightly. Let's talk to her, I said. Both of us. Tomorrow morning. But that wasn't the plan. Before I could even finish forming the next sentence, Michael had already sent the money through a bank app transfer. $18,000. Just like that. Without asking me. Without waiting for her appointment. Without any verification. He must have seen the shock on my face. I couldn't waste time, he said quickly. If she needs treatment tomorrow, she can't wait until morning. My chest went tight. Michael, that is our savings. I know, he whispered. But she's my sister. I felt something break, not loudly, not explosively, but quietly. A thin fracture of trust. The next day Vanessa didn't call us with medical updates. She didn't send a single text. By evening, I was checking my phone every hour, not out of concern but suspicion I didn't want to admit to myself. And then, 3 days later, while scrolling through our niece's social media for photos of her graduation, I saw it, posted casually, brightly, carelessly. There was Vanessa, smiling, healthy, standing in front of the Louvre in Paris wearing a new dress and holding a croissant. The caption read, "Paris Girls Trip, finally living life again." And there, right behind her, unmistakable as a lighthouse in the night, was the Eiffel Tower. My breath left my body. $18,000. For medical bills. And she was in Paris. Shock is a strange emotion. It doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in as your mind tries to reconcile what your eyes are seeing with what you were told. I stared at that picture on my phone for a long time. Too long. Long enough for dinner to burn slightly in the oven. Long enough for Michael to notice my silence. He came into the kitchen with 2 plates in hand and paused when he saw me frozen there, phone still raised, face blank. "Elle," he asked cautiously. I turned the screen toward him. He stared. His jaw slackened. His eyes narrowed. And then, slowly, shame crept across his features. "When was this posted?" he whispered. 2 hours ago." He swallowed. Hard. Maybe this was planned before she got sick. Maybe she still needed the tests and... "Michael," I said softly. "She's wearing a strapless dress, heels, and she's holding a pastry. She does not look like a woman recovering from emergency scans." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. This wasn't the first time Vanessa had twisted a story to get what she wanted. Her entire life had been a long chain of half-truths, dramatics, shortcuts, and self-made chaos. But there was a reason her behavior felt so familiar, almost patterned. For years, Vanessa had relied on her role as the baby of the family. Their parents had spoiled her out of guilt and exhaustion. Michael had picked up the habit like someone inheriting an old piece of furniture. Ugly, but sentimental. And I had looked the other way too many times to count. When she needed a car, Michael helped. When she needed rent, Michael paid. When she ruined her credit, Michael bailed her out. But $18,000 wasn't a bailout. It was a betrayal. And not just by her. By him. Later that evening, after a quiet dinner spent avoiding each other's eyes, I went upstairs to the old cedar chest where we kept our financial records, statements, plans, and the carefully folded notes of our future dreams. As I sifted through the papers, I found the envelope labeled Home Renovation Fund. It was thinner. Too thin. That was when another whisper of dread curled inside me. I pulled up our bank account on my laptop. The $18,000 was gone, of course. But so was $5,000 more. Transferred to an account I did not recognize. My breath hitched. "Michael," I called downstairs. "Can you come here?" He came up slowly, like a man walking toward a courtroom. I pointed to the transaction. "What is this?" He hesitated, then sighed. Vanessa needed an additional buffer. "She didn't want to worry you." "She didn't want to worry me," I repeated, my voice flat. "Or she didn't want me to know?" The silence that followed was my answer. I stared at the numbers on the screen. $23,000. Almost half of what we had worked years to save. Gone. Fed to a lie he hadn't questioned. And that was when a different part of me awakened. The part that had always remembered things others preferred to forget. The part that did not believe in blind trust. The part that could unravel truth with quiet patience. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply said, "Michael, I need the details. Every text. Every call. Every message she sent you." "Why?" he asked. "Because," I said calmly, "if she lied about this, she lied about something else. And I'm done being the quiet one." The next morning, I woke before dawn with a clarity that felt almost physical, as though a veil had been lifted from the world. I made myself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, and began listing everything: dates, transfers, conversations, inconsistencies. If Vanessa thought she had fooled me, she severely underestimated the woman I used to be. Before opening the antique shop, I had worked 20 years as a hospital administrator. I knew how to verify medical claims. I knew how to track paperwork. And I knew how to identify lies dressed up as emergencies. Michael handed me his phone willingly, though reluctantly, and I combed through the threads. Her messages were frantic, urgent, dramatic, exactly her style. High pain levels, fear of cancer, threats of not making it, statements crafted to push emotional buttons. But then there were oddities: missing appointment details, vague diagnoses, no actual doctor names, screenshots that looked off, too cropped, too blurry, too conveniently formatted. I needed proof. So I started calling clinics. The first hospital had never treated a Vanessa Hart. The second clinic had no records for her. The imaging center she claimed refused scans without payment. It didn't even offer the type of scan she claimed she needed. Every call added another layer to the truth. She was never sick. Not even a little. And then I found the piece de resistance: a flight reservation email auto-saved to her shared family cloud account. She had booked the Paris trip 6 weeks earlier. Paid in installments. All before the emergency. I stared at the screen, absorbing the finality of the revelation. Then I dug deeper. Our niece, the one who had posted the Paris photos, had uploaded an entire album. I scrolled through them, documenting each timestamp, each location tag, each smiling appearance of Vanessa looking healthier than she had in years. It wasn't the trip that stung. It was the deliberate, calculated manipulation. The weaponization of family loyalty. The intentional timing to prey on Michael's generosity. Taking our savings was one thing. Playing with our emotions? Another thing entirely. By noon, my investigation had turned into a file: screenshots, printouts, call logs, clinic confirmations. A dossier of truth. But the part that I was not prepared for came at the end of the day, when our daughter Lily came by to drop off some homemade soup. She hesitated before setting it on the counter. "Mom, Dad told me what happened, but he didn't tell you everything." I stopped. "What does that mean?" She bit her lip. "Aunt Vanessa also borrowed money from me. $5,000. She said she needed to pay you and Dad back because she felt guilty. She said you didn't know about that part." My blood ran cold. So Vanessa hadn't just lied. She was running a family-wide scam. And we were all paying for it. The puzzle pieces finally started clicking into place, forming a full picture of a woman who had orchestrated a lie with meticulous selfishness. Not out of desperation, not out of illness, but out of entitlement. Vanessa had always treated money as something other people were obligated to hand her. But this was different. This was manipulation on the scale of a con artist. I gathered the evidence and created a neatly organized folder: dates, screenshots, medical facility statements, flight records, social media posts, and statements from Lily and our older son, who admitted Vanessa had asked him for a small loan 2 months earlier. She hadn't succeeded with him, as he had refused. But she had tried. The truth was a mosaic now, clear and irrefutable. Vanessa had emotionally extorted money from 3 family members and then flown to Europe like a carefree teenager on spring break. By the time evening fell, I had the entire picture laid out in front of me. I felt no rage, only resolve. Steady, quiet, absolute. Michael walked into the dining room where I was sorting papers on the table. "Elle," he said softly, "I talked to her today." I looked up slowly. "Did you tell her we know?" He shook his head. "I didn't have the chance. She called to say she's staying in Paris a few more days. She sounded happy." I met his eyes. "Good. I want her to be comfortable." He frowned. "Why?" "Because comfort comes before the fall," I said gently. He sat down, weary. "Elle, I'm sorry. I should have asked you. I should have questioned things. I should have." "Michael," I said, placing a hand on his, "I'm not angry at you. I'm disappointed. But I know why you did it. And I know it hurts to face the truth about someone you love." Tears filled his eyes. "She's my little sister." "I know," I whispered. "And she used that against you." I opened the folder and turned it toward him. He looked at every piece of evidence, his shoulders sinking as the reality became impossible to deny. "I want you to be the one to call her tomorrow," I said. "But not to accuse her. Not yet." He blinked. "What do you want me to say?" "That we need documentation of her medical visits for tax purposes." that the bank flagged the transfer as suspicious, that we need receipts, statements, and doctor verification. He swallowed. She won't have them. No, I said. But she'll have nowhere to run once she realizes we're not asking. We're requiring. He nodded slowly. And if she refuses? I closed the folder. Then we proceed to step 2. He hesitated. Which is? I let out a quiet breath. Holding her accountable the same way we would anyone else who committed fraud. His eyes widened. You mean? Yes. This wasn't revenge. This was truth delivered with precision. And when Vanessa returned from Paris, we would confront her calmly, factually, and without a single crack in our composure. But before that, I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I needed to speak with the friend she traveled with, the one who had tagged her in all those photos. I sent a message. She replied within minutes. And what she told me would change everything. Vanessa's friend, a woman named Serena, didn't hesitate once I explained I was trying to understand a financial discrepancy. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't cagey. She wasn't even surprised. In fact, she sighed with the kind of exhaustion only someone who had been lied to repeatedly could express. Eleanor, she said, I thought you already knew. Vanessa told us you and Michael gave her the money as a gift. She said she deserved something nice after all the hardship she'd been through. I didn't know she told you it was for medical bills. My heart chilled. Did she mention being sick at all? No. She said her brother finally came through for her. That was all I needed. When Vanessa finally returned 2 days later, suntanned, smiling, and rolling a brand new suitcase, Michael and I were waiting in the living room. Calm. Composed. Ready. She walked in cheerfully. Well, isn't this sweet? My welcoming committee. She dropped her bag, stretched dramatically, and looked at us with an expression that suggested she was expecting praise. Instead, I gestured toward the couch. Sit. Something in my tone made her pause. She sat. Michael remained standing, arms crossed, face unreadable. I sat across from her and placed the folder on the coffee table. We need to talk about the money. She blinked innocently. I told you I'd pay you back. I just needed a chance to. No, I said. We need to talk about how you lied to get it. Her smile stiffened. What are you talking about? I opened the folder. First page. Screenshots of her Paris photos, date stamped. Second page. Statements from the clinics confirming she was never a patient. Third page. Her flight reservation made weeks before the supposed emergency. Her face drained of color. Michael spoke then, voice quiet but steady. Vanessa, you told me you might have cancer. She stared at him, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I leaned forward. We know everything. And we need receipts, documentation, or proof of your medical expenses. Otherwise, you scammed us. Vanessa swallowed hard. Okay, maybe I exaggerated. But you two never help me unless it's serious. I needed a vacation. I needed something good in my life. Why are you attacking me? I stared at her, feeling a strange calm wash over me. We're not attacking you. We're asking for accountability. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. It's just money. Michael's expression broke then, not into anger but grief. $23,000, Vanessa. Money we saved for our future. And you stole it. The word stole made her snap. I didn't steal anything. You gave it to me. Under false pretenses, I said. That makes it fraud. She stood abruptly. You wouldn't dare press charges. I handed her the folder. Take this home. Read it carefully. You have 3 days to return the full amount. Otherwise, we file a formal report. Her face contorted with fury. You're monsters. Both of you. Family doesn't do this to each other. I met her gaze calmly. Family doesn't lie, manipulate, or steal. She grabbed her suitcase and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows shook. Michael sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I placed a hand on his shoulder. It's done. The truth has been spoken. But consequences still had to follow. And they did. Vanessa didn't return the money in 3 days. She didn't return it in 7. Instead, she launched a campaign of self-victimization, calling relatives, twisting the story, crying until her voice cracked, insisting we had blindsided her and demanded money she didn't actually owe. But the truth travels quietly and steadily. And truth, once spoken clearly, does not waver. Her friend Serena backed our story. Our children backed our story. The evidence backed our story. Relatives who had once felt compelled to defend Vanessa suddenly found themselves stunned silent by the clarity of her deception. And then the moment of reckoning arrived. On the 10th day, Michael and I sat together in the police station, each giving calm, factual statements. No dramatics. No embellishment. Just truth. The officer reviewed our documentation, page by page, nodding slowly. "I've seen this before," he said. "Family fraud is still fraud. You've done everything right. We'll initiate the case." It felt surreal walking out of that building, but also strangely peaceful. That evening, Vanessa called Michael 43 times. He didn't answer. She sent texts ranging from apologies to insults to accusations to threats of self-harm. We documented everything and forwarded it to the detective assigned to the case. Within days, an official notice was delivered to her home. And then, silence. Not a calm silence, but the silence of someone finally realizing the world will no longer bend to their will. Weeks passed. Vanessa hired an attorney. And eventually, her attorney contacted ours with a proposal. Full repayment in exchange for dropping the charges. We accepted, but with conditions. She had to repay us and Lily. She had to sign a notarized confession. And she had to agree to cease all contact with us for a minimum of 2 years. Her attorney sighed before saying, "She'll agree. She wants this to go away." Her payments came in 3 installments. Every penny repaid, documented, stamped, and verified. It wasn't joy that filled me when we received the last transfer. It was relief. A deep, steady, cleansing relief. And the realization that justice, quiet, factual, and patient, had prevailed. Life felt different after everything unfolded. Lighter, quieter, more intentional. Michael and I spent long evenings on the porch, sipping tea and watching the sun disappear behind the trees like it always had, but now with an added sense of gratitude. Not for what we had lost, but for what we had learned. Family is a beautiful bond, but it is not a free pass to harm others. Love can be unconditional, but trust cannot. Trust must be earned, guarded, and honored. It took time for Michael to heal from the betrayal. He questioned himself, questioned his judgment, questioned whether he could have done more to shield us from this. But each time those thoughts surfaced, I reminded him gently, compassion is not a flaw. Blindness is, and he would never be blind again. We took our Southwest road trip that fall, watched the red canyons ripple under the evening sun, walked hand in hand through quiet desert towns, sat at a roadside diner where everything smelled like coffee and dust and fresh bread. We talked less about the past and more about the life we still had ahead of us. As for Vanessa, she disappeared from our world entirely. But the truth of what happened remains a reminder I share with anyone willing to listen. Trust should be extended wisely. Boundaries are acts of love. Love for yourself, your future, and the people who honor your integrity. Revenge does not always require anger. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply revealing truth, stepping back, and letting consequences unfold naturally. Calmly, ethically, completely. And now that you've heard my story, I'm curious. Have you ever trusted someone who used your kindness against you? Feel free to share. I'm listening.